Hello and welcome to another video about world building and about how realistic elves would work in the context that they are far longer lived than mere humans. And again, I personally think time is the main factor in how far removed the elves would be from our own human perspective. It all depends on their lifespan. An elf race that would live for 150 years, which is a fairly mild increase in lifespan compared to us humans, which is a fairly mild increase in lifespan as far as fantasy universes are concerned, would still be so vastly different to humans. Even short-sighted actions and policies would account for at least a decade or two, because the very same elves that are doing something will still be around to then suffer the consequences from it. Therefore, elf societies would still face something like the tragedy of the common or other related problems, but the time span it would take for such problems to be caused, to arise, and then to be painfully corrected or dealt with is far longer, and therefore elf societies would be far more stable and long-term thinking from our own human point of view, to the point where other humanoids with a far lower lifespan, for example humans, orcs or catgirls, could focus years on, for example, finding a profitable way to trade with elven society, without having to worry that a sudden change in taxes and tariffs will disrupt supply or demand from the elf side. This could even be a generational thing, where the father, the child and the grandchild will trade with the same elf. The by elf standards very minor increase of just 70 years to their lifespan when compared to humans would turn nearly every elf society into an anchor of stability, because once again the individual elves would all think in much longer time spans compared to us humans. And it will get really weird from our own human perspective if elves really do live for thousands of years. Imagine if elves would take 1000 years just to be an adult. That would be 1000 years of guarding and guiding an individual, but also 1000 years of learning and growing into a functioning member of society, with many decades of practice in even fairly uninteresting things. Just break this down to school. Imagine instead of studying math for 3 odd years, elves would study math for 300 years. The things they could do, learn and figure out even before they were fully grown adults would likely dwarf anything that we humans could achieve in our short lifespan. And with the time to accumulate so much knowledge, every elf would basically be a nearly all-knowing universal genius, able to draw the maps of the world out of memory down to the town districts and streets, simply because he studied them for 100 years. And then he will be very surprised when he learns that this town no longer exists. And again, if elves truly live for 5000 years, then they would think in these, to humans, near infinite times. From Rome to modernity, it was just 2000 years, so basically the first elves would now reach their adulthood or their middle age, and not a single elf would have died from old age at this point. Imagine the perspective that they would have. Towns, nations, and entire empires would be compared to ant colonies or beehives to the elves with their vast lifespan. Yes, they take notice, but ultimately, even the longest standing human civilization would be seen as a very fast-paced, fleeting thing to the long-lived long ears. And if elf lives are truly that long, their entire behavior would be strange and incomprehensible to us humans, like entire elven families or even cities preparing for decades of their life in order to live in the middle of nowhere in a dry and arid region. It would be seen as nothing but madness to us, to entire human generations. And remember, they are elves. They will do things hundreds and thousands of years ahead, and it would be even more incomprehensible to us humans that these towns and these cities that are now being built in the middle of nowhere are only held up by credits, by money, landed over 1000 years. To us humans it would be just nuts. But to the elf it would make perfect sense, because in just 100 years, a major river would have eroded its surrounding land enough that it would change its course by hundreds of miles, and ultimately it would end up flowing through the very desert that the elves are settling in, turning it into a rich green forest and beautiful meadows. And what growing grass or crops are to humans, growing oaks or olive trees would be to elves. So all these bizarre lined up settlements in the desert would be nothing but waterfront properties in a time span no single human could truly understand, and entire kingdoms, languages and civilizations would rise and fall before the simple act of moving to another home would have concluded, as far as the elves are concerned. And maybe the reason why elves are this beautiful, seemingly ageless paragon of goodness and justice is less benign. Maybe, and this would be a huge plot twist, there are no elves at all. Elves are a made-up species of hot, beautiful, talented, wise humans, so that eldritch horrors, who stalk the forests for eternity, could lull an entire nation in a false sense of safety until the stars are right to strike. So my point is that the longer the lifespan of an elf is, the more alien and incomprehensible would his thoughts, actions, and the entirety of his civilization be, and it alone could be a truly great plotline or premise for an entire setting. And with that said, I'm now interested in your thoughts and ideas. How much would a longer lifespan truly change the elves from a human point of view? And with that said, I hope you will join me next time in the next episode of Fantasy World Building. For today, this is it, and I say thank you very much for watching, and have a nice day.